Next speaker is Aviv Schoenfeld from Tel Aviv, who will be talking on mass definite generics. Yes, thank you.
Thank you. Welcome to my talk. This talk is about kind referring NPs, which are defined as referring to the kind named by the noun that heads the NP. In English, bare uncountable singulars can be kind referring, as in pesto is widespread, where the bare uncountable singular pesto is kind referring. I will be discussing definite kind referring NPs, also known as definite generics, built on mass nouns. And such NPs in English cannot be built on simplex mass nouns. So the pesto is widespread. It can't mean pesto as a kind is widespread, although it can mean the aforementioned kind of pesto is widespread. And importantly, definite generics in English can be built on modified mass nouns. So the pesto sauce is widespread can be about pesto as a kind. So we have seen that the pesto cannot be kind referring, while the pesto sauce can be. Pesto and pesto sauce are synonyms. So it is modification by sauce, which licenses the mass definite generic, the pesto sauce. And the first half of this talk accounts for this licensing pattern. So I will begin by presenting Dayal's analysis of definite generics in English. I'll then account for how modification licenses mass definite generics in English. I'll then discuss additional cases where modification affects the occurrence of the definite article. And then I'll discuss mass definite generics across languages, and I will conclude. So the background to this first part is that lion and pesto can have the subkind reading, also known as the taxonomic reading, which is part of the instance subkind ambiguity of nouns, also known as type token ambiguity. So in Simba is a lion, this has lion with the instance reading, while the Berber lion is a widespread lion, has lion with the subkind reading. And similarly, the substance in this jar is pesto, has the instance reading of pesto, while pesto genovese is a widespread pesto, has the subkind reading. And under a couple of analyses, the lion as a definite generic is built on lion with the subkind reading. These analyses assume the standard assumption that the definite article denotes a maximality operator. And they also assume that sub K lion denotes a set whose maximal element is the lion kind. And following these two assumptions, the sub K lion refers to the lion kind. However, this analysis overgenerates in allowing the pesto to refer to pesto as a kind. Because if you extend the second assumption to pesto, you would get that sub K pesto denotes a set whose maximal element is pesto as a kind, and then you would expect the sub K pesto to refer to pesto as a kind, but this is not what we find in the pesto is widespread. It can't be about pesto as a kind. And Dayal prevents this overgeneration in the manner that I will review next. And under Dayal, the lion as a definite generic is the vocalization of a type shift which repairs mismatch between the instance level property denoted by lion and a kind level predicate like that denoted by widespread. So the property is the function from situations to the set of singular line specimens in the situation, and a kind level predicate is something like the set of kinds which are widespread in the situation of evaluation. And Dayal follows Tirkia in assuming that this mismatch between lion and widespread cannot be repaired via nominalization, or nom for short. So nominalization takes a property of type SET and returns its kind correlate of type E sort K. In their conception of nom lion is undefined because nom is defined only for properties whose every extension has a maximal element. It follows from this that nom pesto is defined because in every situation with pesto, the sum of all pesto is pesto. But nom lion is undefined because in situations with multiple lions, the sum of all lions is not a singular lion, but rather it is a plurality of lions. Because nom pesto is defined, the mismatch in pesto is widespread is repairable via nom in the following way. Widespread denotes a kind level predicate. Pesto denotes an instance level property. There is a type mismatch. Apply nom to the property and you get a kind. And then lambda conversion gives pesto as a kind is widespread. Okay, and when we continue to the lion, under Dayal, the mismatch between the lion property and a kind level predicate is repaired via a type shift vocalized as the, specifically this type shift, which is the function from properties to the maximal element in the set of proper and improper kinds of the property. Apply this to lion and you get the maximal element in the set of proper and improper kinds of lions. And since this set is assumed to include the lion kind, then this expression simplifies to the lion kind. So here is the derivation with lion and widespread. There is a mismatch between the kind level predicate and the property, which nom cannot repair because nom lion is undefined. So it is repaired via the taxonomic type shift, which is vocalized as the, and then lambda conversion gives lions as a kind are widespread. And an important part of Dayal's analysis is that nom and the taxonomic type shift are ranked in such a way that the taxonomic type shift is applicable only if nom is not. It follows from this ranking that because nom lion is undefined, the taxonomic type shift is applicable. And that is why instead of lion is widespread, you get the lion is widespread because the taxonomic type shift is vocalized as the. And it further follows that because nom pesto is defined, the taxonomic type shift is blocked. And that is why you get pesto is widespread, but the pesto is widespread. In that case, the pesto cannot be kind referring. And the second part is Dayal's analysis of why definite generics in English cannot be built on simplex mass nouns like pesto. So now we come to the question of how do we account for the pattern where modification licenses mass definite generics in English. The pesto is widespread, can't have a definite generic, but the pesto sauce can be a definite generic. So the next section builds on Dayal's analysis to account for this pattern. And the background to this section is that under multiple works, certain modifiers involve reference to kinds. These include relational adjectives, modificational genitives, and ethnic adjectives. Beginning with relational adjectives, consider pulmonary pertaining to lungs and consider its predicative use in tuberculosis can be pulmonary. Under McNally and Boleda, pulmonary denotes a set of kinds, including pulmonary tuberculosis as a kind. And there are two options for what this set exactly is. So an option in the vein of McNally and Boleda is that it is the set of kinds which verify the kind level predicate pulmonary. And an option in another vein is that it's the set of kinds which are related via relation R to lungs as a kind. Continuing to modificational genitives, consider the following example. Mauritius is mainly a men's genes exporter, with 70% of genes being men's. And as early as Mun, there is the theoretical intuition that such genitives involve reference to kinds. So to quote, the possessor is never referential. Instead, it receives a type interpretation. And with this in mind, consider the predicative use of men's in an example like suits are men's. And a feasible analysis here is that men's denotes a set of kinds which may or may not include suits as a kind. And this denotation might be the set of kinds which are related via R to men as a kind. Continuing to ethnic adjectives, consider French in an example which is about this label. Some will find the 2003 Ribbit Red irresistible for its name, and yep, the wine is French. So a feasible analysis of this case is that French denotes a set of kinds, and Arsenievich and colleagues would say that it is the set of kinds which come into existence within the spatial domain of France. So we have seen works that say that three modifiers can denote sets of kinds: pulmonary, men's, and French. And under my upcoming analysis, it is not coincidental that such modifiers license mass definite generics in English. So beginning with pulmonary, the tuberculosis is widespread. It can't be about tuberculosis as a kind, but the pulmonary tuberculosis is widespread. That can be about pulmonary tuberculosis as a kind. This pattern also replicates in the following example. The tape is widespread, can't have a definite generic, but the electrician's tape is widespread, can have a definite generic. And similarly, the wine is widespread, can't have a definite generic, but the French wine is widespread, can have a definite generic. In all of these cases, the modification affects the meaning of the NP, but recall that the pesto cannot be kind referring, while the pesto sauce can be. Pesto and pesto sauce are synonyms, so I surmise that it is modification itself which licenses mass definite generics in English, rather than any change in meaning which modification may or may not cause. And for completeness, mass definite generics in English are also licensed by argumental genitives. So the hating is widespread, can't have a definite generic, but the hating of minorities is widespread, can. And this licensing also happens by classificative color adjectives. So the gold is widespread, can't be about gold as a kind, but the white gold is widespread, can be about white gold as a kind. And next, I will account for this licensing pattern. Importantly, in kind-referring NPs built on modified mass nouns, the definite article is optional. So you can have either pesto sauce is widespread or the pesto sauce is widespread. And an ingredient in my account of this optionality is that modifiers, like sauce in this case, can have one of two denotations, either an instance level property or a kind level modifier. So the instance level property would be the function from situations to the set of sums of sauce in the situation, while the kind level modifier would be the function from sets of kinds to their intersection with the set of kinds of sauce. And I will show an analysis where each denotation leads to a different version of the NP. First of all, when sauce denotes a property, there is first and foremost a mismatch between two properties, pesto and sauce. Nom cannot repair this mismatch, and I assume that it is repaired via property intersection, which is the function from two properties to the property whose every extension is the intersection of the extensions of P and Q. So applying this repair, you get the following property, the property of being a sum of pesto and being a sum of sauce. But since every bit of pesto is sauce, the conjunct with sauce is redundant. So I simplify it to just the pesto property. And then there is a mismatch which we have seen before. It is repaired via nom, and then we get pesto as a kind is widespread. And because nom is covert in English, this is expressed by pesto sauce is widespread with the bare NP. On the other hand, when sauce denotes a kind level modifier, there is first and foremost a mismatch between a kind level modifier and a property. Nom cannot repair this mismatch. And here I assume that it is repaired by the pesto property shifting to the set of kinds of pesto in the following way. And then lambda conversion, we get the set of kinds, which are kinds of pesto and kinds of sauce. Every kind of pesto is a kind of sauce, so the second conjunct is redundant. And then the argument of iota, which is denoted by the definite article, is the set of kinds of pesto, which is assumed, its maximal element is pesto as a kind. So iota returns pesto as a kind. And again, we get pesto as a kind is widespread. So we have seen that when sauce denotes a property, we get this formula. And when sauce denotes a kind level modifier, we get this formula. And they are equivalent because nom pesto equals pesto as a kind. The difference is that the first formula uses the covert iota, while the second uses the definite article, meaning that the first is expressed by pesto sauce is widespread, while the second equivalent formula is expressed by the pesto sauce is widespread. So why does modification license the definite generic article in mass NPs? The answer in a nutshell is that modification changes the locality facts. When there is no modification, the mass noun is local to the kind level predicate. This mismatch is repairable via the highly ranked nom, and so it must be repaired via nom, meaning that the taxonomic type shift is blocked, which is vocalized as the. This is Dayal's analysis. And the second half of the answer is that when there is modification, the mass noun is local to the modifier. Nom cannot repair the mismatch. And this allows for lower ranked repairs, depending on the denotation of the modifier. So when the modifier denotes a property, you repair the mismatch with property intersection, and you get the bare NP, pesto sauce. But when the modifier denotes a kind level modifier, the property shifts to a set of kinds. And then the maximal element is picked out with the denotation of the definite article, meaning that you get the definite NP, the pesto sauce. So this concludes my analysis of modification, licensing, mass definite generics in English. And in the next section, I want to discuss additional cases where modification affects the occurrence of the definite article. So the first bit of expanded scope is that in English, phrasal modification licenses definite plurals in generic characterizing statements. So consider the students are successful. This can't express a proposition about students in general. It can express one about a salient group of students, but the generic reading is licensed by phrasal modification. The students who are hardworking are successful. That can be about students in general. This licensing is limited to phrasal modification because when you have something like the hardworking students are successful, this can't be about students in general. It has to be about a salient group of students. And Dayal accounts for this pattern with a different semantics for phrasal and non-phrasal modifiers. But note that the licensing in plurals differs from that in mass NPs in two ways. In plurals, modification licenses generic characterizing statements, while in mass NPs, it licenses direct kind predication. And another important difference is that in plurals, licensing is only by phrasal modifiers, while in mass NPs, licensing is by non-phrasal modifiers, such as second nouns in compounds, adjectives, and genitives. So an open question that I have is there a level of generality where these two cases of licensing by modification are instances of the same phenomenon? Now, the second bit of expanded scope is that in German and Old English, adjectival modification of proper nouns affects the optionality of the definite article. So when the name is unmodified, the article is optional, as in the John has called yesterday. But when the name is modified, the article is obligatory in the good John has called yesterday. And I want to present to you Charisma's account of this pattern, which appeals to N to D raising. So this account assumes that the D position of an argumental DP must be filled, and that in DPs built on proper nouns in German, this requirement can be met via either an expletive definite article in D or via covertly raising the proper noun from N to D. And Charisma assumes that when there is no modification, both options are available. So if you use the expletive definite article, you get the John has called yesterday. But if you use covert raising from N to D, you get John has called yesterday. On the other hand, when there is modification, the proper name cannot covertly cross over the adjective and raise to D. And that is why you have to use the expletive definite article and you get the good John has called yesterday. So modification has a different effect on mass NPs in English compared to proper nouns in German. In mass NPs in English, modification turns impossibility into optionality, while in proper nouns in German, modification turns optionality into obligatoriness. With this in mind, I want to ask, can the pattern in English be accounted for with N to D raising, which would be a syntactic analysis as opposed to my semantic one? In order to do that, you would need to assume that in English, if a mass noun can covertly raise to D, then it must. Meaning that in A, pesto is widespread, pesto can and must covertly raise to D, and that precludes the expletive definite article. The second assumption would need to be that in B, pesto sauce, sauce can be in one of two syntactic positions, where one allows pesto to covertly raise, so it must, and that gives the bare version, pesto sauce is widespread, whereas the second syntactic position of sauce disallows the covert raising. So you have to use the expletive definite article, and that gives the pesto sauce is widespread. Now, it could be that this second assumption complements my semantic analysis, where sauce and other modifiers have one of two denotations, either an instance level property or a kind level modifier. And in this context, I want to discuss evidence from Polish that there are two modifier positions which correlate with reference to kinds or instances. So according to Węgiel, in Polish, prenominal adjectives denote instance level predicates. So black woodpecker is paraphrased as woodpecker who is black, whereas post-nominal adjectives denote kind level predicates. So woodpecker black, the paraphrase is specimen of the species Dryocopus marcius. So I have assumed that modifiers in English can have one of two denotations correlating with reference to instances or reference to kinds. So it could be that these correspond to two syntactic positions, which in Polish manifest in word order, but in English, it doesn't affect word order. So in conclusion of this expanded scope section, consider again, the pesto sauce is widespread. So under my semantic analysis, the definite article denotes a maximality operator, whereas under an analysis that appeals to N to D raising, the definite article would be inert, an expletive. So one of my ideas to evaluate which of these two broad approaches is more promising is to check whether they extend to modification, licensing the definite article in proper names in English. So the Brutus might stab Caesar, the definite article is bad, but the conflicted Brutus might stab Caesar, the definite article is optional. So maybe by checking which approach better lends itself to a unified analysis, it could determine between them. So this concludes the expanded scope of how modification affects the occurrence of the definite article. And next, I will discuss mass definite generics across languages. So in languages with definite articles and the count mass distinction, they differ in whether the definite generic article is forbidden, optional, or obligatory in simplex mass NPs. It is forbidden in English. So to express that pesto as a kind is widespread, you can't use the definite article in the pesto is widespread. This article is optional in German. So gold is getting more expensive. The definite article is optional. And lastly, the article is obligatory in Spanish. Water is everywhere. You have to use the definite article. And next, I will present Dayal's account of this pattern. Beginning with English versus Spanish. Under Dayal, English and Spanish differ in that in English, nom is unlexicalized, while in Spanish, nom is lexicalized by the definite article. And Dayal further assumes that English and Spanish are alike in the blocking principle, according to which a covert type shift is blocked if it is equivalent to an overt determiner. And it follows from this principle that in Spanish, covert nom is equivalent to a denotation of the definite article in Spanish, And that means that in 3, water is everywhere. In Spanish, you can't use covert nom, so you have to use the definite article, which denotes nom. And that is why the definite article is obligatory in 3. Continuing to German. So under Dayal, German is like Spanish in that nom is lexicalized by the definite article, but German differs from Spanish in that so first of all, in Spanish as well as in English, a covert type shift is blocked if it is equivalent to any function of an overdeterminer, whereas in German, a covert type shift is blocked if it is equivalent to a canonical function of an overdeterminer. Dayal assumes that nom is a non-canonical function of the definite article, and so it follows, in 2, gold is getting more expensive. The definite version comes from the definite article denoting nom, whereas in the bare version, nom is covert, but it's not blocked because blocking is only by canonical functions of overdeterminers, while nom is not such a canonical function. So let us be reminded of the optionality in the pesto sauce is widespread. And Dayal and the present analysis give differing accounts of the optionality in 2 and 4. So according to Dayal, the optionality in 2 is because nom can either be denoted by the definite article or it can be covert. But under my analysis of 4, modifiers like sauce have one of 2 denotations where one leads to the bare NP and another to the definite NP. So an open question is a uniform analysis of the optionality in 2 and 4 desirable? And assuming a positive answer, I will give such an analysis. And the background to this analysis is the question of what is the basic intention of a noun? One option is it's an instance level property. Another option, it's a kind as an ontological primitive. A third option is that it is a kind level predicate. And a compromise between these options is that it is subject to a parameter. So under Kirkia in plus argument languages, the basic intention of a noun can be a kind as an ontological primitive, while in plus pred languages, the basic intention of a noun can be an instance level property. And an ingredient in my analysis is a parameter in addition to plus minus pred in 4b, and that is the parameter of plus minus pred kind, according to which in plus pred kind languages, the basic intention of a noun can be a kind level predicate. So returning to the cross-linguistic pattern, I will show that it falls out from the parameter settings where English is plus pred inst minus pred kind, German is plus in both of those, and Spanish is minus pred inst plus pred kind. So under the parameter settings in English, the basic intention of a noun in English is of type SET, which is what I have assumed in the first half of the talk. As for Spanish, under the parameter settings the basic intention of agua in Spanish is the predicate of proper and improper kinds of water. Under this analysis, the bare version of 3, water is everywhere, is bad in Spanish because this predicate is not an argumental denotation, whereas the maximality operator denoted by the definite article gives the argumental denotation water as a kind, which is the maximal set in the predicate. So this is Boric and Espinal's analysis of 3. And as for German, Following the parameter settings, gold in German has one of two basic intensions, either the property of instances of gold, or the predicate of proper and improper kinds of gold. When gold has the first denotation, the mismatch is repaired via covert nom, and that gives the bare gold. Whereas when gold denotes a kind level predicate, this non-argumental denotation is made argumental via the maximality operator denoted by the definite article, returning gold as a kind. And that is the definite version of 2. The gold is becoming more expensive. Now, returning to the optionality in 4, the pesto sauce, the preceding analysis is uniform for the optionality in 2 and 4, because in both cases, the mass NP denotes either an instance level property or a kind level predicate, and then the first denotation leads to the bare version, and the second denotation leads to the definite version. The difference is that in English, this ambiguity of the mass NP is licensed by modification, whereas in German, the ambiguity stems from the mass noun itself. So to evaluate my analysis, there are 2 differences between it and that of Dayal. First of all, according under Dayal, languages differ in whether nom is lexicalized by the definite article, whereas under my analysis, there is no need to assume that nom is lexicalized by any definite article. Another difference is that under Dayal, languages differ in whether covert type shifts are blocked by equivalence to any function of an overdeterminer or by equivalence to canonical functions of overdeterminers. Whereas under my analysis, one can maintain a uniform blocking principle. A loose end of my analysis is that I have yet to outline the typological predictions of plus minus pred inst and plus minus pred kind being real parameters, perhaps in addition to the plus minus argument of Kirkia. So next, I want to discuss a bit of modification across languages. So Hebrew is like German in that the generic definite article is optional in simplex mass NPs. So in bronze is a soft metal, the definite article is optional. And the modifiers that I checked do not affect this optionality. So the definite article is optional in pesto is common, and it's also optional in the compound pesto sauce. Similarly, the definite article is optional in the unmodified cheese, and it's also optional in the case of adjectival modification, Swiss cheese. And third, the definite article is optional with isolation, and it's also optional with the genitival modification, isolation of sick people. Right. And the reason that I mention this case of isolation of sick people, where in Hebrew the definite article is optional, is because that in German, this kind of modification I have found, it makes the definite article obligatory. So in isolation is becoming more expensive, the definite article is optional, but in isolation of sick people is becoming more expensive, the definite article in German is obligatory. So the way that I would capture the commonality between English and German, between Hebrew and German regarding the unmodified mass nouns is that both of them are plus pred inst plus pred kind. But then a question for future research is, why does modification by genitives make the definite article obligatory in German, while in Hebrew, it doesn't affect the optionality of the definite article. So so this concludes my analysis of mass definite generics across languages. Next, I will reply to a reviewer and I will conclude. So a reviewer notes that Dayal reports the following example. Wine comes in several varieties: red wine, white wine, and rosé. Now, red wine and white wine are modified, so do I not predict the definite article to be optional in these cases? And my answer is that yes, I do predict that, and I do accept the definite article in a slightly different example, which is wine comes in several types, including the red wine and the white wine. Here, the definite article is optional. And so I do believe that the red wine can, in principle, be a definite generic. In conclusion, several works imply that mass definite generics are completely ruled out in English, but that is not the correct generalization, because mass definite generics can be built on modified mass nouns in English. I have shown you Dayal's account of the pesto being a bad definite generic, and in my estimation, this analysis serves as a good basis to account for how modification licenses mass definite generics in English. And under this account, the gist is that modification changes the locality facts. So to reiterate, when there is no modification, the mass noun is local to the kind level predicate. The mismatch is repairable via the highly ranked covert nom. So you get pesto is widespread, and this repairability by nom, it blocks the taxonomic repair, which is vocalized as the. But when there is modification, the mass noun is local to the modifier. Nom cannot repair the mismatch, no matter the denotation of the modifier. And this allows for lower ranked repairs, where one of them leads to the bare NP and another leads to the definite NP. So thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. We have time for questions. So we'll start with a question here. You have the microphone? Yes.
Okay, so I'm in the in-person venue. So there's the pesto sauce is the is optional before pesto sauce, but not before just pesto. And you say the difference is because of locality difference. But so my question is, so you show the semantic divisions of the two different divisions of pesto sauce, and so the thing is that many of these examples are actually compounds, right? So pesto sauce. So when you're actually computing the semantics of pesto sauce, are you looking into the semantics of a word? Not so. So it seems like you have a semantic computation for below the word level, and also the computation for the syntactical level. And you say the locality facts affect possible interpretation, possible derivations. But I think, well, I don't know how you view compounds, but I think, well, the most common view is that syntax is it's not allowed to look into words. So I don't know if you want to say that there is a locality difference between sentences depending on whether you have pesto or just pesto or pesto sauce, right? So it seems like you're saying that syntax the syntax so the syntax can affect possible I mean, what interpretations are possible for single words? Right?
Right. So
Right, so because you have a kind level predicate widespread, that might affect how the semantics of a single noun can be derived. And I don't know if you want to say that kind of thing. So that was my naive question.
right. So I don't have any strong opinions about whether a compound like pesto sauce has a fundamental relevant difference than the other cases of modification I've discussed, which was also by adjectives and by genitives. Whether I'm saying something undesirable about syntax and that, yeah, I haven't thought about that. Yeah, I will. If you repeat that in Slack, I could think about that more and give you a better answer.
Okay, so I will try to write something. I was like,
Okay.
I will rethink what I just said, and then I will write on Slack. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Thank you.
Okay, Marcin, can you next?
Yeah, hi, Aviv. That was very interesting. So I will start with a very short comment related to the previous question, because so I believe that there are good reasons to think that whenever we have this kind of generic modification, so-called kind modification, so it needs to happen close to the noun, like close to the little np or something, like close in structural sense. So that's exactly what happens in Polish with post nominal adjectives, and I believe that's what's going on also in compounds and in genitives, as opposed to say prenominal adjectives, those that are not necessarily kind modifiers. So I'm absolutely not surprised that you find that in compounds, as your data shows. But my questions, or my question, or my comment has to do with I think that what you've discussed is related to something more general, and that has to do also with number. So in Polish, we don't have articles, right? So, and there's a big debate whether there is a DP layer or not, as I don't have a strong opinion on that. But when you use, when you want to have kind reference in sentences such as, I mean, I don't know, it's like, I mean, the woodpecker is widespread in Europe. It's really hard. It's like I really can't do it with the singular. I mean, it's sometimes in some examples, in some contexts, you can do it with the singular, but not here, right? So in Polish that would be woodpecker is widespread in Europe, and this is really not good. When you do the you need the plural, right? You need woodpeckers are widespread in Europe, then it's fine, it's spotless, right? And then when you do it with the pronominal adjective, so black woodpecker is spread in Europe, this is totally out. It's like, I mean, John is widespread in Europe. But when you do it with the postnominal adjective, woodpecker black is widespread in Europe, now then this is perfect. Like, just like, despite the fact that you have the singular, and with the bare noun woodpecker, it's not good, right? So I think that, I mean, despite the fact that, you know, it's like we don't have articles, so mass generics won't tell you anything, you still see a sort of similar effect. I mean, you know, when you look at bare count nouns, but here not the you know, it's like the definite is not what's going on, but the number. So it seems that this is something more, even more general. So yeah, I really like the talk. Thanks.
Yeah. So that's a very interesting data point. It reminds me of how in Italian, well, it's been suggested. I haven't seen it in the form of a minimal pair, but it has been suggested that the sort of modifier affects whether it licenses a generic bare plural in Italian. So in a bit of a higher level of generality, it's in Polish, it's the position of the modifier as well as its sort of reference. So just thinking out loud of how I might account for that data point in Polish is that in the prenominal adjectives, so the NP denotes a singular property. Nom is assumed to be undefined for singular properties in languages which have a singular plural distinction. And so that would account for the bare black woodpecker can't be kind referring. But then with the post-nominal adjective, somehow it makes the NP be kind referring. I'd have to think how exactly, but that would be the direction.
Yeah, thanks a lot.
Thank you.
I have a question. If you just modify, your pesto sauce example works fine for the pesto sauces widespread, where pesto and sauce and pesto are identical. But when they're not identical, but you still have a mass term in the place of pesto, what do you predict? Let me give you the example I'm thinking of is spaghetti sauce. Where spaghetti sauce is widespread, it's perfectly fine, but the spaghetti sauce is widespread, seems to only have a subkind interpretation, if I'm correct. And does that difference in the relation between spaghetti and sauce actually lead to that prediction on your analysis?
No. Okay, so there are factors that affect the acceptability of definite generics. And so if you find a definite generic which is bad, although it's predicted to be good by my analysis, then you would have to look at those factors. So like one of them is the level in the hierarchy. So there's like in Dutch by Oosterhoff, there's a corpus study which has shown I think it was animal, carnivore, bear, and polar bear, where the lower you go, the more singular definite generics you find. I don't know if it's relevant to spaghetti sauce, because that would imply that spaghetti sauce is too high on the hierarchy. I don't think that's the case. There is another factor which is known under the name of a well-established kind, which is a factor I don't understand very well, but you could, to the extent that it is well-defined, you would check whether the kind of spaghetti sauce is a well-established kind. If it's not, then you don't expect it to be good as a definite generic. Does that answer?
Without the spaghetti sauce seems to be a perfectly fine kind, right? Spaghetti sauce is widespread. So it clearly qualifies as a kind of some sort. So
right. The factor of being a well-established kind, it affects definite kind referring NPs. It's inapplicable to bare NPs.
Right. I was just wondering, you guys. So how do you establish whether something is an established kind?
I wish I knew. Yeah, no, yes. It's a very popular notion which I don't understand very well. Okay.
Okay, thank you very much. We still have time since we got off to a late start. So if there are other questions, we can take them. Anybody? Okay, then we're back on schedule. Well, 1 minute past schedule. And we'll stop here. Thank you very much for a very nice talk.